Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sloppy Lab. This is Bottom of the Beaker, the show all about the design, ducks, and strategy of Keyforge. I'm JT Russell, and with me tonight is the man who always brings 1,300 dice with him whenever he goes to D&D character building, because you never know when you need to roll your lucky number. That's Quick Draw 3457. Hello, Quick Draw. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm trying to do the math in my head on rolling the dice and rolling my lucky number. I'm
Hmm.
not sure how that adds up, um, but I do need a very large dice carrier. That's for sure.
Yeah, that was some quick fuzzy math. I think I overshot it a little bit, right? Like if they're all d6s, you figure 3.5 average on each. You probably want 1,100 or so. Is that right?
Yeah, it sounds
Yeah,
about right.
that was all right. I mean, you can, depending on if you tend to roll highs or lows, as is your style, you could get a little risky.
Depends on the context. I was playing Root the other day, and if you've not played Root, they actually have a very interesting D12, and it has three zeros, three ones, three twos, and three threes, and you
Huh?
roll the dice for battling. And zeros are very bad there, and I rolled nothing but zeros all night.
It
So
has three zeros, three ones, three twos, and three threes.
yeah, so it's a D12, and it just goes up to three.
Sounds like a glorified D4, if you ask me.
You're probably not wrong. The D4 is like the weird pyramid shaped, which is
Yes,
not really like as it's not as pleasing,
I
it doesn't
agree with
have
you.
that same, yeah.
I agree with you on
But
that.
well, or I mean, I guess you could do a D8. That seems like that would make sense too.
If you have the same number, you can reduce all the way down to one side, one face for each. But yeah, if you don't want the weird pyramid shape, totally,
Yeah,
totally.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel that.
Well, um, so the long story short there is that I was rolling very badly that game, and I'm trying to tie this together the best I can. And sometimes it's good to be bad, but not when you're playing Root. Don't be bad when you're playing Root.
When you're playing root,
Um, yeah, I don't know. How did I do tying that together? Was that a reasonable segue?
I've never played root, so you could have said anything, and if you had a straight face, it would have worked.
There are some Root fans in the NKFL server. I hope they give me a shout out. Talk some strategy sometime. Uh, but yeah, I've been really into Root lately.
Well,
Highly recommend it as a board game.
I was gonna say you've recommended it a few times, so I think it's time to make it happen. I don't know, you got to do
Yeah,
it.
yeah, should do it. It'd be one of those great game to bring to Future Vault Tour, and when people are tired of losing at Keyforge, late night gaming, get some Root in. Be a fun one.
Nice. I dig it. And welcome to folks in the chat. Hey, Dataforge stream. Let's get sloppy indeed. Oh, and Cloggin always with the hard hitting questions, man. I love this. We have on the stream right now Gargantus Scrapper up, and he's wondering if is this an early Geistoid giant? Looks, I mean, could be sifting through the old scrap pile for some Geistoid fuel, as it were. Jargoggle too. I don't know. Could be. Could be. I would say
We gotta.
that
I, I,
Cloggin is
I
the
don't know.
expert.
I was gonna
Yeah.
say Cloggin is probably one person that should know this for sure. He's asking the question, and we're asking right back at you.
Ketzer, maybe?
Or Ketzer. I was gonna say if Ketzer's joining this evening, maybe Ketzer can give us some info on that one.
Totally. I'd love to think that these were early little teasers to that future. Maybe. Mm, we can dream. We can dream.
Yeah, maybe they definitely thought that far ahead. Definitely.
I will say
I'm not confident in that.
I'm not confident in that from a I don't know, flavor standpoint. Though the flavor for the Equidon house was definitely in shapes that resembled its current shape very very early on. So it could be. Oh yeah, the
The
chat's a fun
Cloggin
time, folks.
keeping
If
us
you,
honest.
yeah,
Yeah.
keep us honest. But anyway, we have a fun topic in store for this evening. Um, actually, we're going to be talking. What are we talking about? Quick Draw. What are we talking about tonight?
We're going to be talking, to put it simply, we're going to be talking about bad cards and why they are good.
It's good to be bad, and partly inspired by our friends over at the Weekend Key Warriors podcast. They did an episode on bad cards very recently, which I enjoyed thoroughly. Appreciated the episode, and we're gonna, take us for a different spin. So they talked a lot about, how to identify bad cards and what to do with them. And for the hard hitting strategy, they got some big brains over there putting out the good content on that. We are taking more of a designy approach to the topic, which is pretty fun. So if you're looking for how to identify bad cards, this is not the episode for you. That one's the one for you. If you're maybe more curious about why they're great for a game and why they're important to exist, like this is a cool one. And you'll also hear about, our favorite things to do with them and favorite ones even, I think. So
And just a spoiler alert, our favorite things to do with them is not to play Shredder.
not even with the Gargantus Scrapper, as it were. Gargantus Shredder? I don't know.
It's just the crapper. We just call it the crapper.
Yeah, it is behated and goes by that name many a place indeed.
Yeah,
Okay, so yeah, let's dive right in. I dig it.
sure. Yeah. We always have like a interest in the design part of Keyforge, and so this is one that this is an article you shared with me probably a couple years ago at this point, and we always were like kind of talking about this and how interesting it was as a concept. We are going to link the article for everyone in chat here, and I'm sure that our wonderful producer is going to put it in the show notes as well. But it is a article from Magic the Gathering's, I guess, what's his title now? Head designer, lead designer, Mark Rosewater.
Probably something along those lines. Yeah.
It's he's a big shot over there, you know. I He writes a lot of design articles, and this is one that he wrote about bad cards and why they're necessary in a game like Magic. And obviously, Keyforge being not a constructed game is a little bit different, but there is a lot of really nice principles that we can take from that. I thought it was a fascinating read. Definitely gave me a different perspective. And we've talked a lot about this, within the Sloppy Lab. And there's a lot of good out of this, I think, as far as like the health of the game, but also strategically. There's like some interesting aspects that you can take too, depending on what type of player you are.
Man, January of 2002. That is a deep cut. Deep cut.
Yeah, there's a lot of archives from Mark Rosewater that are still very good reads.
Yeah, some good stuff. Cool. And so the absolute takeaway, the chat already beat us to it, and we're fond of saying it on the show here. But ABCD, always be card discarding. The bad cards are just coaching you to do the right things.
Yeah, but even the Gargantus Crapper is not a discard unless you also have the First Blood for some value. That's really the only time that a card like that is a discard. It is the Gargantus Scrapper is not actively bad like something like Bad Penny usually is, or plenty of other examples. Dexter, depending on who you're talking to, cards like that. This is a little bit different. It's more of just a do nothing card. Again, I don't want to get too much into that, but that is what the Weekend Warrior podcast talked about what different types of bad cards there are. We're not going to get quite into that. So let's start with Mark Rosewater, because you have linked and you've talked a lot about his stuff before. What drew you to this topic from his writings in the past?
Yeah, and honestly, some of his points really do hint at things that I love about Keyforge. The bad cards really do set you on, the quote unquote bad cards really do set you on a path to discovery, right? Some cards look bad but aren't. Some cards look good but are actually bad. And sifting through those is a really important part of the journey for new players, especially, right? Like, I'm sure we've all been there. You read Bad Penny. The first time you read Bad Penny, and you're like, you mean I have a creature that never dies? Like, this is amazing. And that's a thing that's very common to like the new player experience, especially if you're not a hardcore gamer or have played a lot of other games, or if you just haven't, maybe you are, but you just haven't kind of like fully like grasped the, intuited the I can only play one house every turn sort of idea, and how resources flow in the game, and those sorts of cards, Bad Penny especially, has like has lessons built into it, and the pathway to discovery is there in a lot of these bad cards, and that was a big piece of his article, which I liked, and I'd like too to get into how that's specific to Keyforge versus something like Magic, but that's the first one. There's paths to discovery that are baked into bad cards. So that's one. I don't know if you had anything you wanted to jam on that before I move on to
Well,
some of the
just
others.
one other, yeah, one thing I like to add to that, like I found this really good because, in Coda, it's very easy, like once you're more advanced in the game, to look at Bad Penny and understand why it's a bad card.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if we look at future sets and some bad cards, and I will admit, and we'll talk about this in a bit too, that future sets, the bad cards are not as bad as they used to be. But now that most of us listening to this or watching or talking about this right now are more familiar with like the deeper level of Keyforge strategy, we can generally look at new cards and be like, that's a good card, that's a bad card. But at the same time, there are still going to be some bad cards. You have to put the bad cards in there, and this is what Rosewater was getting at, is that you have to put the bad cards in there that are secretly good or sometimes good,
Mm-hmm.
which enables that discovery to say, like, okay, like this is a bad card, but maybe I can find a way to make this good.
Yep.
And even Bad Penny has ways of doing that. Even Dexter has ways of doing that. And I think that's such a great part about this game. And I think it's a very important part too, considering you don't have that level of constructed and you really have to play with the deck you're dealt with. And I think having a bad cards is a very key part of that.
Yeah, totally. The this deck is a fixed thing, is a blessing and a curse, totally. And like you just have to make the bad cards work, and figuring out how to do that. Even once you figured out that hey, this card is generally bad, not having that be the end of the conversation for you, uh, and having to reevaluate in different matchups and different situations is super super interesting. And even set to set as new things get printed or there's different environments, in a lot of games where you can put whatever you want into a deck, it's very easy to say, "Oh, I have this sense for what rate I should be getting, what value I should be getting for particular resource consumption." Right? Like I'm not a fab player per se, but you do hear that there's having a big fab player for a brother, right? There's like an idea of how much value you should get for the resources at different levels. There's the cards that pitch for 1, 2, and 3. I'm not sure what the resources are called, but there's the 1, 2, and 3 tier, and there's kind of this sense for what rate you should be getting of value at each of those tiers, and you can very easily judge whether or not cards are above or below grade in terms of value. And that's something that you can almost take for granted in a deck building game, but is not one that you have the luxury of being able to, not an idea that you have the luxury of being able to lean on in a game like Keyforge, which is super cool, I think.
Yeah, agreed. And, I think maybe related to this and relevant to think about is the number of decks registered per set as
Hmm.
well. Because when we see that there are uh, seemingly more bad cards in Coda, maybe a spike in AOA, depending on who you talk to, fewer in Worlds Collide, fewer in Mass Mutation, probably more in Dark Tidings, let's be real. And then I, maybe none. Like, I can't think of any cards, Zoc mentioned Blacksmith in Winds of Exchange, that's a bad
Ancient
card.
Battleground, yeah.
Ancient Battleground, yeah, like these ones, you're like, yeah, these are bad cards, but they're not bad. They're just you discard them, and they're harder to come by usually. I think they're uncommon or rare, both of those.
Mm.
Whereas every deck you open in Coda is going to have like a Bad Penny or a Dexter or a Niffleape or something that's just like doesn't do enough, doesn't. And so when you have like over what is it 2 million Coda decks registered,
Let's
or
say
is
that,
it
sure. Yeah.
I think it's not quite that much. Um, you still get those high end decks because with that sample size, you're going to find these high quality decks. And then as we've had fewer and fewer decks registered in subsequent sets, you have fewer bad cards. You're still seeing a similar ceiling of decks. Imagine if Winds of Exchange had the print run of Coda, but did not have the bad cards. The kind of decks we'd be seeing in Winds of Exchange, I think, would be off the charts. Uh, Or flip this. What if Winds of Exchange had the number of bad cards that Coda has?
Hmm.
With the small print run that we've seen so far, would anyone even be playing this? Or would it really be like a set that people would be playing at Vault Tours like we've seen? I think that's kind of interesting too. And maybe we have to think about how they're designing this based on what the expected print run of the set is too. Because if the print run is going to be smaller in the future, maybe they can't afford to put in as many bad cards as they did originally with a very high print run.
Interesting. So are you saying that you think that there is an intentional like raising of the sea level in terms of overall card quality in anticipation of lower print runs?
No, I don't think it's intentional. I think it may be a happy accident. It may just be that we're lucky. In fact, Fabulousing asked directly at KFC a couple weeks ago about power creep, and is it something that they are like actively trying to do or go for? And the answer was no, that they're not actively seeking out power creep. It's just kind of been part of the development process. And I mean, to be honest, the answer was a little unsatisfying to me because it
Mm-hmm.
either says we don't think there's power creep, but I think we all know there is, or you know, they don't think this is power creep, and I don't know. It's hard to explain, but I didn't quite like the answer to that question. So to answer your question, no, I don't think that they are actively considering print run with card quality, but I think it just so happens the way that the game and the state we're in right now, the economics of the game, I think we're kind of lucky that the print run is lower because of this.
Mm. And now I'm curious too. When you are looking at when you're looking at a set like Winds of Exchange, do you judge its cards as good or bad relative to the rest of the sets, or are you looking within Winds of Exchange and saying like in Winds of Exchange this card is bad? I mean, I think something like Ancient Battleground is just bad generally.
Hmm.
But there are other cards. Do you consider good cards good or bad within the context of just Winds of Exchange, or within the context of Keyforge generally?
Um, I think in the context of Keyforge generally
Hmm.
is what I would say. I am more of a person that when I look at a deck, I try to look at different synergies. And I don't really think like, oh, that's a bad card. I used to think like that. I used to say, like, I actually, good story here. I had a Coda deck, probably one of the first 10 decks that I've ever opened. And it is Croc of Lermal Void. And just to spare you the details, you don't need to look it up. It is just a combo deck with library access, phase shift,
Key
reverse
abduction.
time, battle
Yeah.
fleet, key abduction.
Mm-hmm.
So it has the one turn kill possibility. And as an inexperienced player, I knew enough to say like that's a bad card, that's a good card. I did not understand the depth of that combo and how to properly set it up and how to use it. And when I first was a newer player, I opened that deck and it has I think two Dexters in it, and I instantly thought like, man, this deck has two terrible cards. This is probably a very bad deck. And I wasn't thinking of it in terms of the overall synergies and combos. Nowadays, I look at a deck and I don't really look and say like that's a bad card. I really look at like what is this deck's identity? What's it trying to do? How is it working with other cards? And that might be like, okay, I see I have three Seeker Needles and get excited and look for a bad penny with that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like things like that. So I think it's how you're looking at a deck list is different as well. And I'm not just looking at it as like good card, bad card, good card, bad card.
Mm. Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I think I do also tend to look at cards and evaluate them across all of Keyforge, and certainly if you look at DOK, you have it's not what's the arc within Woe, it's what's the arc as evaluated across all of the cards and all the decks. So we have kind of the scale that everybody uses that cuts across all of time. But at the same time, we look at, or I guess, and we look at something like CPO Zytar and say, gosh, this is just a better infomorph. Like it's got armor, it's got an additional damage pip that it grants, as well as the two draw pips. It's just better than infomorph. But I mean, I think the environment and context really matters, right? If we had a oh gosh, blanking on the Cronus.
Cronus?
Cronus. Yeah, you know where I was going with that.
I do.
We do not have a Cronus in Woe, but we do in Mass Mutations. Those Mass Mutation draw pips are just better, especially in Logos, than they are in than they are in Winds of Exchange. So I don't think it's really fair to look at cards across set and call one strictly better or strictly worse necessarily, only because the context that surrounds each of those cards is going to be different with very little crossover, right? Barring some legacies here and there, you're really not going to see the Winds of Exchange cards getting the benefits of a mass mutation context per se. So
Hmm.
even though you might see some quote unquote strict upgrades, um, I think that's okay and doesn't necessarily mean that you know a card that's was good before is still going to be good, and that's an interesting question. Or a card that was bad before and got reprinted is still going to be bad. Um, yeah,
Yeah. So I think for most of our favorite decks, we probably have some bad cards in them, and that's not pushing us away from those decks anymore. Um, I think a lot of us, especially if we have a lot of favorite uh, AOA and Coda decks, we all have a bad penny. So like, if we're not avoiding those cards or the decks with those cards anymore, um, how does this differ from like CCGs, where in a CCG you could just like, I'm never including a bad penny or a bad card, whereas here we have to play around those cards. Like, how does that affect like you in the game as a gamer? Like when you're looking at a deck and playing a deck compared to CCGs.
yeah. From a design perspective and from a game, in terms of what I like about the game, and this is really one of the things that drew me to Keyforge initially, or really got me hooked. Like I've played a lot of Magic. My fondest memories of Magic are from when I was just beginning and didn't have any, you know, wasn't looking up decks online, seeing what, wasn't really worried about what the meta was. I was just kind of cracking some packs and throwing some decks together and jamming those. And some of the cards were good, some of them were bad, but I was playing what I had access to, and I had to make do with the bad cards that were there because I had to get to 60 or 40 or whatever the case may have been, and sometimes that meant playing some suboptimal choices, and that was a lot of fun. Like having to do that was a lot of fun. And then getting to a point later where no, I could trade for or pick up the cards that I needed to get to what I considered an optimal list. Just meant I wasn't having to. There was a whole class of puzzles within the game that I was essentially avoiding for the sake of optimization, right? And Keyforge says, no, you're going to still get to or have to wrestle with those puzzles, and I think that's an awesome thing, and that's really one of the things that drew me to Keyforge initially. It was a lot of the feel of the games from sort of early Magic, or even later on when you're playing something like Commander, which for folks who aren't familiar is a much higher card counts per deck. You're playing 100 cards or 99 plus one, and you can only play singletons, so no multiples. And very often you see folks making very splashy or flavorful deck construction choices, and you're seeing higher variance games in situations where you've got to make do with whatever you've got. But I think it provides for a kind of scrappier problem solving, puzzling things out sort of experience that really speaks to folks. And I think that the bad cards really get you down in the trenches with kind of doing that, and it's something that I really appreciate about the game.
I think your experience with Magic is extremely relatable too. Like I was the same way when I was a kid, and I had a limited budget, and I'm playing Star Wars CCG and Magic a little bit, and you can't just afford to have like the 60 best cards that you read won a major tournament in Scry magazine the week before. Like not everyone has that. You have to play with this stuff that's like, well, um, I wish I had a. I'm trying to remember the names of the cards now, like Lightning Bolt, but not everyone has Lightning Bolt, and so there's the one that came out later that deals 2 damage instead of three. Like I got to make do with this instead of the Lightning Bolt, and so those kind of, not that that's a bad card, but and you're gonna tell me what the name is, aren't you?
Shock.
I was gonna say Shock. I almost said Shock. Um, but we had Orion on last season on this show to
Mhm.
talk about like playing Keyforge on a budget, and I think it's a very relatable problem where people are like, yeah, like we've all played games where we haven't had the biggest budget and all the best cards, and having to make do with that is a really awesome part of a game's discovery, especially in a game like Keyforge where you can't change those cards and you have to learn how the best way to play a deck and play around these bad cards are. Like you might have a cursed relic, which we could say is by itself obviously a bad card, but what it does for your deck maybe is, debatable whether it's positive or negative value. But you have to have a plan for how to handle that specific bad card in your deck. And maybe that means you're going to protect your old Tinker or play your old Tinker as soon as possible to try to like get rid of it from the start. Or maybe you'll
Hmm.
hold your trade secrets for a very long time just to ensure that you can get rid of the Curse Relic when you want to. Like you have to develop these ways of playing around your deck's limitations in Keyforge, whereas other games you're just like, well, I'm just going to not put that card in my deck at all. And I think that's the beautiful part of Keyforge is having to do that.
Hmm. Totally. Oh, we have an interesting question too from the chat here. Do you think cards gain or lose bad card designation or status? With kind of token making as a mechanic. You were mentioning before, I think before we got on, that you thought that just in general, the card quality in WoW was higher, and there were fewer bad cards. I mean, maybe it was at the top of the show, but we thought of there were a couple examples of bad cards in WoW. Certainly, I'd say it mitigates their impact, at least on average, right?
I don't think I would agree. I
Okay.
think it has no impact because, and this is kind of related to what was discussed when Winds of Exchange came out with how we were going to score these cards on decks of Keyforge.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to make the assumption that, each time, each game, sure, you might tokenize this Curse Relic, but you also might tokenize your closed door negotiation or befuddle. Like you can't just assume that like, okay, this card is less bad because I might tokenize it, because at the same time, you're not saying that that befuddle is less good because you might tokenize it. I don't think it cuts both ways. And I think you just kind of have to assume that like some games you're going to tokenize the wrong card, some games you're going to tokenize the right card.
Yeah, it kind of works out in the wash on averages, right? You'll just as often be playing the bottom half of your deck as you will the top of your deck, and it kind of nets out to about the same. But on average, your deck has a rate of goodness that's consistent, regardless of which specific cards you tokenize. That like rate is the same, or as sort of a constant for the deck, if that makes sense. I guess with WoW, I started thinking of Arc and SAS as more like a rate than a fixed number, right? Or at least in terms of just vanilla card quality, not synergies. This is maybe a little bit of a different question, but yeah, you think about the average value you're getting per card, not necessarily from an individual card specifically. Hmm.
Yeah. And not to get on too sidetracked on this, but yeah, I think we've definitely talked before about how your SAS score of a deck could be displayed as a range instead of a fixed number. And that might give you a better picture of what the deck's capable of, both in the high end and the low end.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's a bit of a tangent away from the bad card discussion. So save that for another day.
For another day. Cool. Well, yeah. Well, we definitely hit on context being super relevant. I do really like bad cards. I do really like having bad cards in that they provide, yeah, these puzzles for you to solve, the path to discovery. Ancient battleground. You look at it, and there will be a lot of folks who read it and say this card's awesome. And I'm not saying that there aren't decks that it isn't playable in, or there aren't situations where it's not playable. Uh, but I think in general, it's a little bit of a trap, and the fact that it is a trap is an interesting kind of chance for discovery for folks. Um,
Hmm.
and then once you've determined that it's not a good card, being able to recognize situations where it's still good in this situation, even though it's generally bad, is also interesting. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. And like I love that about that. And so like when Winds of Exchange came out, there was cards like that and even Corner of the Market where I was like, if I'm not closing out a game, is this really a good card? And I would advise anyone playing a new card, a new deck, or a new set, something you're not familiar with, first time through it, just play every card. You could look at a card and be like, this card's terrible, and I know it is, and I know this is going to be bad for me. I would say play it anyway, because I think it's important to learn and experience why a card is bad and how bad it is for your deck. And in the crazy scenarios, maybe you'll discover, like, actually, because I played this, because I gave it a shot, I learned something different about it, and maybe it's not quite as bad as I thought it was. And you can find some situations where you might want to actually play it. So for For new decks, I would just say first time you're playing through it, play every card. Don't even think about it. Just see what happens with it, and learn your lesson one way or another. And then next time after you know, and like, yeah, I remember last time I played this Ancient Battleground, they just discarded all their creatures. That's an important lesson that you may not have gotten had you just played it out. And so I think early on in the discovery phase, it's good to just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks.
And then after you've done the discovery, throw everything in the bin. Always be card discarding.
Yeah, actually, I had a couple Ancient Battleground decks before where I was like, yeah, I got a Celestial Gorm in here, I got an Auction Off in here. I could definitely throw this out there, get some value, clear their board, and then just whenever I'm done with it, Celestial Gorm, pop it back. I mean, obviously that's going to be risky if they have their own artifact control to take out your Gorm, but you know what I mean. Like there's options
Hmm.
that you can find situations like that, and I think seeking those situations out and those combos out is pretty interesting to me.
Yeah, I love that. I love the extra facets to the puzzle that get layered in. Yeah, figuring out how to make the ancient battleground work or make the bad penny work is just like a beautiful thing. Um, I dig it.
Yeah.
I dig it.
In fact, I rule of six the bad penny. I think I rule of six it. Maybe it was only five on stream on Fudgenator stream at the World Championship
This was with Kanban.
against. This was with Kanban. Yeah.
Nice,
I had a desk switch out that stuck, and I think I played and used the bad penny six times in a turn.
nice.
So not always bad.
Oh yeah, we almost had this come up on our game after the recording last week. I was debating whether or not to leave the dust switch, and let's be honest, folks. No one's ever really debating whether or not to leave the dust switch. They're just wondering if they can look themselves in the mirror in the next morning if they let it live.
That is
but,
true.
but you had the dust switch. You had a slot open next to Little Niff, and it's like, oh, what's the worst that can happen with the switch? Rule of six bad penny would be hilarious.
Yeah, that's been the dream. I don't know if I've ever maybe pulled it off once with the little Niff, but it's so hard to get two small elusive wishes to stick for two straight turns and then have the bad penny in the right
Hmm.
situation. It's so rare to have that happen.
Yeah, totally. I mean, if you were starting your turn with the dust switch in play, things are already good for you. I suppose steal three with your bad penny is not the worst that could happen, but it's just it's funny. I
Yeah,
like it.
yeah. Keep looking for those ways of using those bad cards.
I
That's good.
mean, I know I've bring this deck up often, but oddly nefarious Carl would absolutely love a bad penny. The
I
behated
know.
card, the card everybody loves to hate. This deck would kill for a bad penny. Triple Seeker Needle, Mac the Knife, not Mac the Knife. Yes, Mac the Knife, um, and a Soul Snatcher. Oof, a Soul Snatcher. This is criminal quick draw. A Soul Snatcher that gets rated negative 1.25 in this deck. Oof, breaks my heart, but I love to
Yeah,
see it.
you love to see it. Keep that SAS cap eligible.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Too funny.
Um, so let's jump back for a second to the question of do we have fewer bad cards in
Mm.
not just Winds of Exchange, but also Grim Reminders? Grim Reminders, the jury is still out. I learned a ton playing just like 3 or 4 games with Grim Reminders. But I won't pretend to know enough to say answer this question. But it feels to me like there are fewer bad cards in WoW. Do you think so too?
I think WoW in general has fewer bad cards, fewer obviously bad cards. Yes.
Hmm.
There are some that are situational, uh, and I think there are some that are maybe more that are situational. I don't know if that's true. Um, I think token making itself provides an interesting puzzle and isn't always the right thing to do, and that's kind of maybe where some of that questioning the things that you knew about Keyforge is coming in. And actually, a brief aside, this was something that I really did appreciate from the Q&A section with Gigi at Keyforge Celebration. They're really emphasizing getting into the game ways for folks to rethink things that they held as true about the game, like, oh, it's not good to hold cards generally is the thing that they're challenging you with, maybe in Grim Reminders, for example. Um, uh, and I think in WoW we have this interesting question of whether I should be going as wide as I can, or should I be not making this token now per se, and what's going to be the impact of my long term strategy. Um, but in general, I would say that there's fewer bad cards in WoW. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also feel that the best cards are better.
Hmm.
Like we always look at Hallowfest, Befuddle. These cards are very high ceiling, and so what I think of when I see fewer bad cards, you know, you have a higher density of good cards in the deck just by definition. If you have fewer bad cards, there's more good cards, and I think the higher density of good cards you have, the shorter the game is going to be. Because if all your cards are doing good things for you and giving you value, it's going to shorten the game just because you're playing, all these better cards, you're playing them more frequently, you're having fewer turns that just kind of don't pitch cards for no value. Like how many times in AOA and Coda have we had this turn where you're just like, well, I'll just play like a bad penny, or I'll discard bad penny, I'll play a Seeker Needle, and I'll play a Skeleton Key uh, for no value and pass the turn. And like your whole turn is like you just got rid of cards basically that aren't
Mm-hmm.
doing much for you. And lengthening the game like that with these bad cards, I think gives players more agency. And what I have not really enjoyed about Winds of Exchange is just that every single turn is high value cards, high value plays, things you must answer immediately, or the runaway board state will win, or the Halifest Brobnar combo will win, or all of the pips that you see in decks with like 20 some pips, they're just going to run away and the game's over. And I think having fewer bad cards in this set to me is part of the reason why these games are just kind of over faster. They're decided faster.
Hmm.
And I don't like that because it feels to me like I have less agency as a player because I only have like 5 turns to figure out if I can win this game or not compared to maybe like 7 to 10.
Yeah, I really like this point, especially cross set play. And I've often wondered. I mean, what do you think is? Do you have in your mind the ideal length for a game, or what you think is now too fast for decks to be threatening key three per se?
We have a rule that we've talked about in our team where with Winds of Exchange rush decks, if you're not checking for your third key by turn 7, you're not a rush deck.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels to me like that is way more common in Winds of Exchange to open a deck that can check for key 3 on turn 7 than it is in any previous set.
Yeah, we've definitely had quite a few that hit that mark, especially when you consider the overall open rate for us relative to some of the older sets that we've opened, for sure. And I think along with that, an uptick in disruption that comes along with pips exacerbates that,
Yeah.
right? When you look at
Yeah.
Trashman or Veggie it's not just that they're checking for key 3 on turn 6 or 7, but it's also that, well, one of the turns you played Befuddle or Corner of the Market, and all of a sudden your opponent has, instead of 6 or 7 turns, 4 or 5 turns to really muster a defense, which is interesting. Yeah, yeah. I maybe this is a reason why I like SASCAP games so much, or have really I've really felt a breath of fresh air with Kagi. Some of the decks that are a little bit lower powered, with the game stretching out longer, it feels like the game has more time to mature, and really your deck can do its thing and develop, as opposed to just kind of asking whose pips lined up right, or whose power cards lined up right. So I could agree with that. In general, I don't think that an overall, too many good cards is necessarily a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Hmm.
think this probably is the best argument I've heard in favor of SASCAP.
Hmm. Interesting.
I'm not a SASCAP fan, but it's compelling to me to say like, yeah, like SASCAP means you're going to have low value cards that you need to play around. I still can't get past the fact that to me SASCAP is a format where you are actively trying to take advantage of a system that was created by individuals, that are doing the best they can to score cards for a completely different purpose than a SASCAP event. So there's still the negatives of it, in my opinion, but you're right that this is like, when you're playing SASCAP, you're gonna encounter this stuff and you have to get around it. I think that was kind of the idea about reversal to begin with, was
Mm,
like, play reversal and you're gonna be handed a very bad deck and you have to do the best you can with it. In theory, it sounds pretty cool, but in practice, I've witnessed some decks that literally cannot win. I saw someone, they shared with me what they said was the worst reversal deck they've ever seen in their life, and I was like, how bad could it be? I probably got one that could compete with it. It has one bonus amber and plague rats and just like so few other creatures. It just,
mm.
all of its cards just do nothing. It cannot make any amber, period. And I was like, yeah, actually, I think this might be the worst deck I've ever seen in my life. And so that's what kind of like everyone thinks of with reversal now, and obviously the format is essentially dead at this point.
Yeah, it's a shame. Although I am always on the hunt for a good reversal deck just to have. I don't know why. Maybe it's my propensity for the negative play experiences to push on my opponent.
Yeah, well, I can vouch for that. You definitely have that propensity.
I do indeed. I do indeed, and not
Yeah.
ashamed about either. Though I don't know. I don't know about rats. Man, I love rats. I feel like I'd be very suspicious of, very uneasy giving my opponent a rats deck to play with in a reversal game. You've got elusive bodies to reap with, and creature control all baked into one nice tidy package. I don't know, man.
I'll send you the deck if I can find it later. I think you'll probably agree after looking at it that it's probably
Okay.
the worst of the worst.
Okay. Well, we'll look forward to that. Um, though, I mean, man, we were talking about what's our favorite bad cards. Like plague rats are a behated card as well. People love to hate the plague rats. I love the plague rats, man. I don't know.
Mm.
I don't know what it is. I played actually a great game with Karen in the minors league earlier today, and it was plague rats versus troopers. It's kind of like it was a
I was
Sasket
going to say,
game.
does Trooper still count?
Troopers probably still counts in the public opinion, although I
I don't
think
know.
they're catching on.
The tide is turning with the Troopers.
Hey, the tide is turning. Yeah, yeah. But I don't know, man. Plague rats. I like plague rats. Like troopers too. What can I say? Unpopular opinions catching on. Um,
Yeah. Um, I would say Troopers probably, if it still counts. I don't think it does. Another one that I encountered as we were preparing for this one is World Tree. World
yes.
Tree is one that people have always been like, oh, it's just a bad card. It's slow. Doesn't give you an Amber Pit. Blah blah blah. I have World Tree in my Evil Twin deck, and it just makes the deck tick. Where you get the Evil Witch of the Dawn every single turn, and keep bringing back the Chronophage and other creatures that give you value. And then when you're done with your entire turn, you're like, all right, I'll use the World Tree, put the Witch on top of my deck, and I'm gonna get ready to do it again next turn.
Mm. So I don't know. Let's maybe hit on, as we're talking about favorites, and I have some favorite cards too, but I also curious about, what are the lessons, or what makes these good bad cards per se. So Bad Penny, I think, is a good example of a bad card, a good design of a bad card, because it teaches you about handcrafting. Like there are handcrafting lessons built into Bad Penny. You spend a few games getting your hand clogged, and you say something's going wrong with the way that my matches are playing. Like, what is it? And you're like, well, this Bad Penny keeps getting stuck in my hand. Maybe I should be thinking about, how my hand is shaping up turn over turn, and this is sort of a lesson baked into Bad Penny. I don't know. The rats are interesting. Like, would you say there's a lesson in the rats themselves, or any of or World Tree, for example? Is there kind of a lesson or a puzzle in World Tree?
Um, I haven't played with rats in literally years, so I can't speak with any authority on that. I did watch your miners game today, and those rats got some good value against you.
Mm-hmm.
That was a very cool deck from Karen. Um, I don't know, like World Tree is one that I think maybe it is kind of akin to Bad Penny because you're gonna play the World Tree, and later in future turns, if you're not setting up a combo. So again, like so many of these bad cards I think can be good with a combo. You talked about Bad Penny and Soul Snatcher, how you wish you had it in Carl. And I've talked about the World Tree with the Evil Witch of the Dawn. Like those are combos, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
there are definitely combos to be had with bad cards. But if we're just talking about like a regular deck that has a World Tree, what is the lesson you're trying to take from using that? Like you might go to an untamed turn and you have like three shadows in your hand and you're thinking, oh, I'm probably going to go shadows next turn because I already have three cards. I'm going to draw three more. I'll probably draw another shadows. And so you might world tree back like, a shadows creature or something like that. But then you end up like not drawing what you think, or you draw into a better option with another house. And you have to like learn over time, like, okay, like I am predicting one of the cards that I'm going to draw, and what if I'm like not sure I'm going into that house the next turn? Because a lot can change once you draw, once they handle your board. And so you might be like, okay, I'm going to go straight back into Untamed next turn. Let's put like this Witch of the Eye back on top of my deck. And then the next turn comes around, they wipe your Untamed board, and all you have in your hand from Untamed is this Witch of the Eye. And it turns out that it's a chain for a turn. And by the time you play it, you have to wait another turn to get value from it. And so when you're playing a card like World Tree, you have to kind of like figure this stuff out, trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
Um, World Tree is not a discard, but you may not use it as often as you might think you would. And so getting into those situations, and kind of similar to what I said about like first time you're playing a deck or a new set, just play the cards. I would say just try the World Tree. Just use it. See what it does for you, see what it hurts you with, and kind of make a judgment from there about like how it's actually helping or hurting you.
Yeah, totally. There are puzzles or learning pathways in there just to kind of sum up, like around planning your turns, and also telegraphing, the perils of telegraphing a little bit, kind of baked into World Tree, which is interesting, especially if there's not a combo that's looming and you're threatening. It's just like, hey, I'm probably calling shadows next turn and I'm playing this card and maybe have some others in my grip. There's some telegraphing that happens there, and that's a little bit of a trap that you at least have to be aware of, if not play around specifically. Um, I mean, thinking about Gargantus Scrapper and to an extent First Blood as well, uh, I definitely see folks holding them to get max value, and this is a little bit analogous, thinking back on MTG days to morph creatures. Magic had this ability baked in at one point where you had this modal element, modal option for creatures. You can either play it as a small vanilla dude for a low cost, or you could wait until you could afford the high cost and get max value. And the trap there is like people just wait. They'll just wait because it feels bad to like throw value away. But a lot of times it's right to just take the value you can get now. Like play the scrapper now, get the vanilla dude. You didn't get the damage, but you got a card out of your hand. You're going to keep moving. And similarly for, First Blood, take the pip. Okay, you didn't get to spread any damage around, but like that's fine. And there are traps baked in, which are also learning moments for folks who are new or kind of figuring these out. Like, what's the right balance point? How often should I actually be holding these up for max value, and how often shouldn't I? And I think that's what makes these very interesting to me as quote unquote bad cards.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely agree with that.
yeah, cool. Well, I don't know. I know that those were some of my favorites. I mean, it's probably unfair to call Soul Snatcher a bad card. As we got called out in the chat already. There's some that are more situational than bad per se, and this one's just lowly rated in a particular deck where it happens to be good in a combo, but
Yeah.
is potentially a trap too, and has kind of lessons baked into it around evaluating where the game's headed, and kind of who's going to benefit more from an effect like it, especially when it's not being used for nefarious combo purposes.
Good choice of word there.
Indeed, it was intentional. Pun
Uh,
intended.
there you go. So I told Dataforge Stream earlier that we would talk about Dexter.
Okay.
He wanted to know. I think I'm going to find the word. Can we talk about the savages that play Dexter? Is what Zoc said. Um, I don't think Dexter is as bad as I thought it was in the past, but I think it also has more use cases. So, like,
Mm.
one example I gave you earlier is like, I am more likely to play a Dexter if I have a Library of Babel in my deck. Because I feel that the Library of Babel mitigates some of the downside of Dexter, And it's kind of nice to always have that option of amber control in Logos and getting that one amber captured back on it. If you have the Library of Babel, that means that you can either fight with the Dexter and then just redraw into it immediately, or you can ensure that you know you draw your next turn that you have like that card you would have drawn if that Dexter wasn't clogging your hand. You're still going to be able to draw it. Not a perfect situation, but it, in my opinion, mitigates it a little bit. So I could see a lot of other use cases for Dexter as well, but yeah, I will admit there's a lot of decks that I have where I'm just not going to play it.
Hmm. You just got all these draws to spare. You can waste them on Dexter. Is what you're saying.
No, I mean it's so every time you have a draw in the middle of your turn, you have a 1 in 3 chance of getting some value. And if you have a Dexter, then you know you're getting at least some value out of that draw.
Hmm. Hmm. I don't know. It feels a little bit like kicking the can down the road in one because you're still leaving yourself hanging with this Dexter on board that's going to clog up future draws, potentially on non-logos turns that you're going into, right? Uh, and not to
What about a
mention,
library access turn? Do you play him?
on a library access turn, I play him. Yes.
Savage.
Yeah. Yeah. On a library access turn, I play him. Um, and I feel bad about myself, but I do it.
And then you're stuck with it in your hand the turn after that and not wanting to go back to Logos
Yeah.
since you just played all your Logos cards.
Yep.
And now you have this Dexter you can't get rid of.
Totally. Totally. It's the worst. It's the worst.
I,
But
I
I'm
find it interesting.
greedy.
Well, sorry, like kind of pivot again out of nowhere. I just had a thought about training costs. I was playing Not Tonight in a game a few weeks ago, and I forget what card it was, but I think maybe a sunk cost I played to like randomly discard a card, and I hit the training costs out of her hand. Um, and I was thinking how nice it would be if someone could just like randomly discard the Dexter, or the Cursed Relic, things like that, and like the bad cards in WoW, it seems like they're coming with like the pros and cons. Like the Cursed Relic comes with 6 pips that it brings in. The training cost brings in the most powerful token just by like in a vacuum. Um, and so I don't know, they're interesting in that regard because you can't just look at training costs and say like training cost is obviously a bad card, um, but it does bring some other value into the deck that you can't really quantify in a single card. I think there's more cards like that in Winds of Exchange than there are. And so, like, obviously, things like training costs by themselves are bad, but they're like the worst of the worst in Winds of Exchange, but only when you look at them in a vacuum.
Mm. Yeah. We've got, what, Xenos and Toad, which are arguably both not great cards.
Xenos Blood Shadow?
Xenos Blood Shadow. Yeah.
It's a perfectly fine card.
This was called out as a bad card, I think, on the Weekend Key Warrior cast, if I'm remembering correctly.
I
I
mean,
don't.
Toad obviously is a bad card,
Toad's a
but
bad card. Toad's. I
yeah.
mean, you can still fight with it. It's just instructing you. This is for you, Cloggin, right? Toad is just instructing you how to play optimally. You must fight with the Toad.
Uh,
What are you
I
doing,
gotta say
Regan?
though, you know what I often do with the Toad?
What's that?
Just let him sit there on the board. If
Yeah.
I fight with him, that means I'm going to draw him again.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Yeah. Yeah. The Toad lives there for definitely. A spectator life is the Toad's life.
he's just sitting there. Everyone's leaving him alone. He's like, all right, I'm just going to sit here. I got nothing better to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Just gonna sit here and mess up your Fangtooth Cavern ideas with Key Frog. That's my plan. I don't
That's
know.
true too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
do we have any things we wanted to hit on that we haven't already?
I think those are the big ones. I mean, we talked about context being super important when evaluating good cards. People do bemoan like, "Hey, why do bad cards exist?" And obviously, there's got to be a lower half of the power pool, the power spectrum, right? It can't just all be above grade, as it were.
Hmm.
Certainly, you can look at cards within a specific set and ask if these are all generally better than the ones that have come before it. But within a given set, the given pool for a
Hmm.
deck, if you're looking at just sealed, for example, there are going to be cards that are bad relative to the others. And I don't know, I guess if you're looking at even within a single set, there are going to be cards that are worse than others, but there could be a tighter grouping on power level, right? Like we could look at Woe and say, you know what, in Woe there aren't that many bad cards, but that's because the quote unquote bad cards in Woe are just not that much worse than the decent or good cards, right? As opposed to
Mm.
things like Coda, where, the Dexters and the Bad Pennies are clearly a cut below by a decent margin some of the other ones. Um, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's important to keep in mind that the power curve is relative, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're always going to have a card that is the worst card in the set, and I think it only becomes, a little bit sketchy if you are comparing one set to an older set. That's when it like kind of becomes more complex. But if we're just looking at a single set, yeah, like something is always going to be the worst card in the set. Something's always going to be the best card in the set. And you were kind of touching on like what is the discrepancy between the highest and the lowest. I think that's important to look at. I think that gap is wider in Coda. Uh, I think I think it's probably wider in Coda than it is in Winds of Exchange, and I think the ceiling is also higher in Winds of Exchange.
Mm-hmm. I don't disagree with you. I definitely think it's important for there to be, a range, a gradual range between the highest and lowest. So you don't want things to be too tightly packed, and important to have some situational cards in there too, to give it some texture. Totally.
Yeah. All right, we got time for another question. So the Cloggin wants us to. We've talked about the single player perspective on bad cards. What about the two-player perspective on it? For example, what cards destroy or deter or force a rage quit from an experienced new kitchen table player? I think he means inexperienced. Um, I would
Mm.
say honestly, it's the high power stuff that does that, not the bad cards. Like all the stories I've heard about someone rage quitting are not because, oh man, like my deck has three bad pennies in it. They have all been about my opponent played Gang or Not and I couldn't do anything about it, or my opponent played, Restringuntus and I literally was locked out and I couldn't do anything. Like it's the good cards, in my opinion, that cause those rage quits. I haven't heard as many stories about the bad cards causing rage quits.
Interesting. So you think there's more like oh my gosh, turn one Hellfist again, I'm out type
Yeah,
experiences than like why do I have four bad pennies in my hand
yeah,
every game?
yeah, for sure.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I think either way uh, can lead to those sorts of feels. We see it. Yeah, cats are chatting in here. If you get to a point where it feels like, or one of the players feels like they're just not getting to play the game, uh, that's probably not a good thing. And as much as I personally love Heart of the Forest, it does lead to this is a bad player experience potential type card, right? Which can lead to those same sorts of things. So I don't know, like viewed from that lens, uh, yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think getting blown out can lead to some super bad feels, maybe more so than being forced to wrestle with some of your suboptimal cards per se. Totally. Hmm. Hmm.
Is a card considered a good card if it's able to force the rage quit?
Only in VOT leagues, as it were.
No, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a good card. I think it creates a bad experience. Like you can have mediocre cards that happen to go off once and create a miserable experience for your opponent. Like that can happen.
Hmm.
Doesn't mean the card's good. Just means it caused somebody to quit the game forever.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it gets back to your point about agency. It's definitely a thing that the GG folks have been uh, thinking on. I mean, I think that was cited as one of the reasons why Alliance exists. You want to increase the feeling of player agency, and I think power creep can be a dangerous thing, especially as the number of turns in a game goes down. You want to feel like you've got time to assemble your game plan and actually execute it. Hmm. Well,
Yeah,
I don't know.
was
Interesting.
trying to avoid was trying to avoid the alliance reference. She brought it in.
avoid those bad cards. Now you don't have to play them anymore. Quick draw. Isn't your life
Yeah,
better?
I was just gonna say that. Like I was intentionally kind of avoiding the discussion on Alliance because yeah, like we said all along in this episode that you don't have to play the bad cards, or rather you have to play the bad cards in Keyforge. You don't have to play them in other games. Alliance is like a situation where like, well, maybe you don't actually have to play those bad cards, and that to me is another reason why it's less interesting to me.
Hmm. Is owning lots of decks less interesting to you? I mean, there's Alliance, sure, and then there's also mining for decks without bad cards in them, right?
I got to be honest, I don't like having a lot of decks. I'm over 500 still. My new rule is that if I can't fit all of my decks in my cabinet that I built, then I need to sell some.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've had two bulk sales that I've done in the last year or so. I have another one ready. Um, I think when you have more decks like that, like I'm not an alliance player again, so when I have more decks, I don't get value out of those because I'm not looking for specific pods or I have more decks than I can play already, and I'm the kind of player that wants to play a variety of decks. So I think there is a diminishing return on opening new decks for me now because I have opened so many. Where I don't know, I definitely feel like it's less interesting to me to open decks than it used to be.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know. I don't know if I should say how many I've opened.
I won't ask. It's okay.
uh, yeah. No, it's interesting. And regardless of how many you've got, your collection represents the cream of the sum of the decks that you've opened, right? Uh, in terms of your capacity to avoid bad cards per se. But be that as may, it's an interesting idea. I don't know. I think we just got to get you to play some more SASCAP quick draw. Yeah.
Ugh. I don't know if that's gonna happen. I mean, it would be a way for me. I was just scrolling through my favorite decks right before the show, and there was a bunch of decks in there that I do love, and I have fun playing them, but they're just not good enough to play in the formats that I play in, which are generally Archon, Hexad, and Kagi. I could play them in Kagi, but I look for something very specific in Kagi. So
Oh, right on, right on. Well, cool. Wait. I was just going to say anything else, but I had one other thing I forgot to mention earlier. Our favorite bad cards. I didn't touch on Strange Ordination, which is, don't get me wrong, it's not a bad card, but it's a strict downgrade. Virtuous Works, right? I think that's at least something we can agree on. So kind of, if you're looking at cards and comparing them, you might look at Virtuous Works and say like, oh man, really? Or not Virtuous Works, sorry, excuse me, Strange Ordination. You'd look at that and say, oh man, really? What's going on here? I was used to living the Virtuous Works life, and now you've got me taking tides to get my 3 ambers. Like, what's the deal? I really like this card design wise a lot because it asks you to evaluate the cost of raising the tide relative to like the core resource of the game, or the core resource of the game being amber, right? And it's very simple, like cut and dry. Like, is taking the tide worth 3 amber right now? And like, yeah, you may already have it, you may not, but I think this card is excellent design wise, even though it's a strict downgrade, because in the set Dark Tidings, where you have to figure out the tide, it asks you to just kind of, or even you could even say it's the designers telling you how to value taking the tide, which I think is really nice as a sort of design signpost in the set.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's probably a lot of DT cards that I could think about that are technically bad, but I still like them anyway.
All your favorite cards, quick draw. All your favorite
I
cards.
think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
probably all my favorite ones.
Cool. Well, all right. Any last thoughts, good or bad, before we wrap?
No, that's it for me, I think, this evening.
Well, cool. Well, speaking of bad cards, there's arguably a bad card inspired Is this a bad card? I don't know. Our sponsor
Yeah,
this
bad
evening,
card.
it's a bad card. Our
Yeah.
sponsor this evening is none other than Spangler Box Escape Rooms. So, and they've written us a nice little note here. And it says, embark on the adventure of a lifetime with Spangler Box, the immersive Keyforge escape room experience. Assemble your team of Archons and delve into the mysteries of the Crucible, where ancient artifacts and hidden chambers await your discovery. Collaborate with your team to forge keys and make strategic decisions that shape the unfolding narrative. Book your session now at spanglerboxescape.com and unleash the Archon within you in this unforgettable journey through the heart of Keyforge. So awesome. Thanks very much, Spangler Box Escape Rooms. I dig it.
Very good idea.
Very
Yeah.
good idea. Are you escape room guy? Quick draw. Do you do escape rooms?
Never done one.
I think you'd enjoy
I
them.
don't. I think I probably would. I don't have any specific aversion to them. I just haven't found myself in a situation where a group of friends has said, "Hey, let's go to an escape room tonight."
Okay, well, maybe you'll head over to spanglerboxescape.com and see what they have to offer.
You're right.
Cool. Well, folks, Bottom of the Beaker is recorded live on Tuesdays at 9:30, sometimes 9. Tonight it was a little earlier, Eastern Time, right here at twitch.tv/sloppylabwork. You can find recordings of our past shows and other streams over at YouTube. Search for @sloppylabwork over there. And for the very best content, 34? No, 57 times distilled and scraped from the bottom of the beaker. Search for that very phrase in your podcatcher of choice, and we'll be there, right between the Bad Penny and Dexter, waiting to play some Keyforge with you. Thanks very much, as always, Quick Draw. Any final words for the folks getting off the last audio stop?
I hope you guys enjoyed talking about bad cards, and stay sloppy.
Stay sloppy indeed. All right. Oh, it must just be down, clogging. 4-4s, yeah. Give it a try tomorrow. They'll be back. Or they're stuck and they need to escape. I don't know.
Maybe that's part of the game.
It's part of the game. The puzzle has already started. All right. Adjusting our layout. Stopping the Zencaster. Very
So
good.
after this discussion, we're playing the best alliance decks we have, right?
I think that's the deal.
I'm trying to think about what I did want to
Whoa.
play. What do you want to play tonight?
Well, it's got to be something featuring bad cards.
It's got to be, but we both have plenty of those. Are you thinking like reversal level?
Should we play reversal game?
How bad do you want to play? An actual reversal game? You want me to show you that Plague Rats deck?
I kind of want to see the Plague Rats deck.
All right, let me find it for you. Now that we're off the podcast section, now I can try to like dig for this deck. It's really bad. I'll throw it in the chat when I find it too.
I wish this deck, the Ratcatcher deck with Plague Rats. The deck is named Ratcatcher with Plague Rats, quad binate rupture, and a whopping 10 expected amber. Did not have a sting, which I think the sting is an automatic exclude. You are automatically not eligible for reversal if your deck has the sting in it. All right, what do you got here? Quick draw.
So it's Lady Fletcher is
35.
the Rats deck.
Wow.
1,
24
2, 3.
creatures. This is not a reversal deck. Get out of here. Come on, man.
But like, what are you gonna do with those creatures with the Plague Rats?
I'm going to fight. No, I'm going to reap.
With just your Plague Rats.
Just my Plague Rats.
All of the Amber control is Swindle, a Dusk Runner, and a Gamgee. It has 7 expected Amber. I don't know, man. This deck's really bad.
It's pretty
I don't
bad.
think I've ever seen a deck with a single Amber pit before.
Dude, you're gonna put rocket boots on your Plague Rats. You're gonna put a Dusk Runner on that rat. It's gonna be game over.
And then your opponent kills it with like a single card, and then you're back to like nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So are we playing reversal?
I don't know if I have anything this bad.
I that's not my deck. I would not dare bring that. That's very bad.
You
I
have
can
it?
bring a reversal deck. I have a reversal deck that I think is a pretty quality reversal candidate.
I don't know if I actually have a good reversal deck.
How many decks have you opened? You have to have some bad ones.
Uh,
You only open good decks, though.
I only open good decks, and I really like the janky stuff. So I don't know. I look at these bad decks, and I'm like, yeah, finding stuff to love about them. I don't know. We have also the SAS floor reversal. SAS floor reversal could be kind of fun.
I will say SAS Floor Reversal is a pretty interesting concept. I feel like, though, that since I never win, we should just play Reversal, and I can bring my Reversal deck, and you can bring something good.
Oh man, I have a good reversal. I have a good SAS floor reversal deck. What was that?
What floor do you want?
Well, let me check let me check what the deck's at.
uh, 49 Reversal is what you're gonna
70,
say.
70 reversal. I don't know what it's at. Let's say 70. I don't want to be that guy
74.
who's like, no, 70. You could bring anything 70 or higher and we'll play reversal.
Okay, 70 or higher.
Okay.
Um, oh, I have a deck that I traded a Beehawk that would be perfect for this. Um, I don't even know what I'm gonna choose, actually. I You have something.
No,
See, this is how I lose all these games because
74.
you're like, "Oh, why don't we play this random format that I just thought of right now?" And I definitely haven't had a deck ready for this for a long time. Are we
Let's
playing
see.
Future Saz? Is that right?
I am using Future SAS. You
Okay.
can use whatever you like. How about that?
I have Future Saz on, so just so we're playing apples to apples here. I have a lot of decks
Oh
in the low
no.
70s.
Did it go below 70? Has it gone below 70 now?
Oh, well, too bad. You already set the Saz limit.
Oh no.
I'm not letting you change on me now.
What? What? What?
So you're saying that Saz is getting better?
Saz is on to me. Oh no, this is so sad. My like go-to high SAS reversal deck.
Uh,
What? I can't even remember the name though. This is terrible. 68. 68 now. Yeah, it used to
hmm.
be 74. I think it was 75 at one point. It was my 75 plus reversal candidate. Uh,
You know what my problem is here? Is that, like I just said, I got rid of a bunch of bulk sales. So I'm looking at all of my 70 SAS decks, and I'm like, these are all good decks. Like, what is going on here?
all right, and the chat's going to keep me honest here. Quick draw. Here's what we're going to do. You're going to put a max of 70. No, sorry, a min of 70 um, on your filters.
Wait a
Put
minute.
on,
Okay,
okay. Turn on
go ahead.
favorites. Okay.
Min of 70.
Min of 70 favorites. So the lowest deck rated at least 70 among your favorites is what we're going to go with.
Okay. I was just thinking, like, we're idiots. Why don't we just use random access archives?
We could do that too.
We haven't done that in forever.
All right. Want to do that?
I kind of want to. I'm curious what my lowest SAS favorite deck is now. It's probably Kanben, to be honest with you.
Oop, lowest SAS, min of 70. Sort that way.
It's a pretty good Worlds Collide deck. But
Ooh.
it's a 71 now. Because if you're sorting, oh, that's funny though. If you sort by future SAS, it's out of order. So like the lowest of my favorites, the only one I have that is exactly 70 is Croc of Lermal Void.
Awesome.
Have
Awesome.
you played that before?
I don't know if I've actually played it. I've played against it once, knowing the
D-
combo
Double
potential.
Dexter.
Double
How
Dexter.
bad could it be? Do we want to do that, or you want to do random access archives?
I have actually a pretty spicy deck that I'd be handing over to you. Does it have bad cards in it? It has some cards that are not great.
Do you mean for like the 70?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, let's do that then. We
Okay.
talked about Croc.
Okay.
Let's just do it. We'll play reversal. I'll bring Croc. You bring whatever spicy thing you have for me.
Odendrum, the Courier of the Empress. You won't recognize the name, I think, but you'll recognize the deck. Um,
Game is up for you in
yes.
beginner. Oops, nope. Don't join that game. It's not a reversal game.
Sloppy. Sloppy quick draw.
It's what they say. All right, now I got it up. Unless I fat fingered it.
All right. Odendrum. Odendrum, the courier of the Empress. 55 win percent. Okay, we'll see.
It's probably about what Croc is, if I'm being honest.
All right, here's the question, though. Do I have time to set up this nonsense and then...
Croc? Oh, I'm at... Oh, wow. Wait, what? Oh, my win percentage with Croc is 46%.
Terrible deck. Terrible deck.
Terrible deck. All right, so I'm playing AOA. Let's look for the bad cards. Yerk. No one likes to discard cards. That's so bad. Exterminate.
Oof, this is bad news.
Destroy them all is good. Okay. Double Exhume. Double Life Word. Okay. Yeah, this deck doesn't seem that good. You said this was spicy.
It is spicy.
It has the Guntus. The Guntus is pretty solid, I guess. Okay.
Croc.
All right.
Zookeeper, Phosphorus Stars, Hysteria, Hand of Dis, Bolter, Red Planetary Gun. Ugh.
Are you just telling me what's in your hand right now?
No, I'm reading your creature control.
Oh.
I'm reading the creature control that I have against like the 7 Taunters, Restring Guntus, double Exhume deck.
Yeah. I have a double Exhume Guntus deck with a couple Gubs, a Hadroth's Wall, some good stuff like that. Might be on par with this one you handed me.
Man, a man gets a hand like this and it makes him think. I'm going to try and do the combo thing. We'll see if it happens.
It's so hard to not try to do the combo thing because it's so much fun. I just feel like I'm robbing myself of an opportunity if I just try to play a fair game with the deck.
Man. All right. Archiving things. Quick draw. Archiving things. Yup.
Martians.
3 Martian dudes. Nice. You just know what a sucker I am for like sketchy combos. I've been had.
Wait, what are you calling sketchy?
Yeah. All right, we're going
That's a great combo.
We're gonna Fogify. Phase shift.
Didn't you tell me before that you did not like... I thought you did not like first turn lab works.
Ooh, did I say that? I don't know if I said that.
I'm pretty sure you called me out on this show before for a first turn lab work. Or I went with a first turn lab work. You were playing Kanben.
Yes. Yes.
You remember this now?
I remember this game. I don't know if I called you up for the first turn lab work because it was a lab work instead of a Flaxio, right? Something like that.
But I archived the Flaxia with the lab work.
I mean, just take the two amber now, my guy, you know?
But you're going to get the 2 amber later.
Maybe. Oofa doofa. I don't like where this is going. I mean, okay. We're just going to hope
Straight
that I
back to logos.
time that for this all to line up. Fogify again. Lab work again. And play the Library of the Damned. Cool.
Well, if I can't fight and I can't play cards, I think I'm just going to use the Martians.
Seems good. Ay, ay, ay. I mean, it's kind of funny.
Reverse time again.
I could. I'm wondering if this is a waste. Let's see. 8. Math's hard.
Indeed.
4. 11. Okay, so I'll take a key now, I guess. Make you reset some things. Okay. Discard that EMP blast. Take an amber here. Discard this guy. Okay. Cool.
It's a pretty good turn.
It's a turn. It's a turn.
And now what do I do? You are setting me back. That is some good disruption.
Hmm.
It's always interesting to see the key abduction work that way.
Yeah, the key abduction Mars mirror is cool.
All right, let's just go back to Mars.
Here come the dudes.
A couple of them.
Discards a couple of them too. Discards
Well,
the Dominator. Interesting.
The
Oh
Ember
yeah.
Imp.
Playing 2 cards. That's a thing, I guess.
That's the thing.
That's a thing. I mean, we're going Dis. Gonna get a Reap. Gonna get an Archive here for some value. I think we're just gonna keep clogging the hand here.
I was afraid of that.
Yeah. And should have checked. Yeah. Well, if you 3 fates me, you 3 fates me. What are you going to do?
If I could 3 fates you, I would have done it 3 turns ago. I haven't drawn a card since turn 2.
Mm-hmm. Dang.
Yeah, and this is honestly my only option.
Back into Dis we go. No, in the archives, we are going to archive another card. Play a dude. And reap it out.
Yeah, this is pretty bad.
Yeah, fights off the Ember Imp. Cool. Okay, there's Taunter. That's some
I only drawed a
dudes.
4. So still not good.
Still not good. Going back into Dis here. For better or worse. Archive a thing. Reap it out. Okay. More sanctum duders. They are big duders. Yeah.
Finally, a big hand. What is this?
Man. Really interesting. Hmm. One more go with this here. Get a steal. Get a reap. Archive a thing. Big keys. Sure. Oh, there was an epiphany in the chat. I don't get it. I don't get it.
What's that? What's the epiphany?
JT is the Terry Gross of Keyforge creators. I'm not cool enough to know who Terry Gross is, I think.
You
I'm
don't know
not.
who Terry Gross is?
The name sounds super familiar. Maybe I'm blanking.
NPR.
News anchor? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
There we go. All right. Yeah. Is that a compliment? I'll take it.
I think
Fresh
it
air.
is.
Oh, fresh air host. Okay. There we go. Cool. I like it. I'll take that. I'll take that as a compliment. I haven't listened to Fresh Air in a while, though I do listen to Up First pretty much daily. Are they? They don't do Up First often? I don't know. 7, huh? All right, let's do the thing. Let's do the thing. See what happens. Will things
All
happen?
right.
I
I
don't know.
think it's too early, but you have 2 keys, so how bad could it be?
Yeah, we're just going for the funsies here. All right, we're playing the library access. See, yeah, it's interesting because like just sitting here handcrafting is like kind of suspect with Restringuntus floating around. Um, I don't know. All right, so we'll lead things off, I guess. 16. So I have three logos cards in discard among 16 and one in draw of 8. So I guess I'm reverse timing first. Okay.
You could definitely draw into what you need to then.
Mm-hmm. First, we're going to reverse time, and then we'll library access. Do I care about this key? Okay. Okay. Giving you duders to fight into. Playing those Dexters. Let's go, Dexter. Come
Savage.
on. Where's the phase shift? There's the phase shift. Let's go.
Probably got the hysteria by now.
I do have the hysteria. I do have the hysteria. But there's just the one phase shift. So this is interesting.
Yeah, it's if you are going for the thing, that's the one phase shift means that you have to make sure you can shuffle your deck
Mm-hmm.
to replay it.
So Asteria is gonna draw me three additional cards plus the ones. Four, one, two. It's only one more. Yeah, I think we Hysteria here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you gave me this dud of a deck over here. I didn't even see 19 cards.
All right, well, we're gonna switch decks after this. Yeah, archive some things. Man, I got stuff to archive over here. We'll do that one. Okay, nice. Look at me, making good use of all these Dexters. Quick draw. That's how you do it. Mm-hmm.
Technically going to live to fight another turn, but it will be to no avail.
I mean, I guess I should have taken that one. But free is free. Okay.
Nice.
Okay. GG.
GG.
Oofa doofa. I have to admit, I did not expect the combo and croc to come together that well. Yeah.
It does have the archiving pieces. I
Mm-hmm.
think what did it for you was definitely the disruption,
Yep.
like having the time, because it's really a deck about having time to set it up, and you definitely found the time because of the disruption. Maybe I
Yes.
could have discarded creatures, but like, turn one, I'm not discarding three Mars creatures. Um, I just happened to get dealt with, I think, six creatures in my opening hand, five creatures
Hmm.
plus a Golden Aura. And that's why I kept going back to Mars because I needed to get rid of the Ember Imp. And the only way to do the Ember Imp was to go um, with Mars and then the Golden Aura. And I couldn't go Sanctum because then I have to go back to Sanctum just to get rid of it. And I wouldn't have very much Sanctum in my hand at the time. So I was I was definitely stuck, I think.
Yeah. The number one thing you did wrong in that game, I think, was not drawing Restringuntus. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's on me. Now
That's
I
on
know.
you.
Or the Life Word, or a Destroy Them All, or a Carpet Flotsam,
Mm-hmm.
or all kinds of goodies.
There's some cool stuff. There's some cool stuff. Yeah, I did not get a chance to fight with the Dexters, unfortunately. Cloggin, sorry. Um, yeah. I don't know. I feel like I have to redeem Odendrum. Do we play a swap decks, a reversal game now? An Archon
Uh,
game now?
if you want to embarrass me again, we can do that. I'm
All
gonna
right.
draw duds with this one this time and just get locked out on turn three. Looks like the game failed.
Ooh, game failed.
I'll make you a new one.
Okay.
I'll just make it Archon, normal.
Okay, trying this for size. Odendrum. Cool.
Yeah, there's like 100% chance I get locked out this game.
All right, good luck. Have fun. Hilarious. I
Yeah,
mean, I don't know if it's good, but I have to do it just for the.
it's happening for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have no creatures in hand. Uh,
Oh man, this is too funny. Too funny for the good guys, you know. Okay, I'll move a couple cards here. That's that phrase you were talking about before that folks never say when they're playing only good cards. Take a turn to move some things. Um, yeah. Think drone. Nice. I mean, I'm just gonna do the thing there. Ooh, connection issues, maybe.
Yep, it is indeed. Cool. Great. This is going wonderfully. And I'm gonna call it.
Okay. Hand of dis. Ugh.
I have 5 discs. I nailed it. I said 100% chance that I get locked out. All right, let's
Okay.
go Mars and play that battle fleet.
Oof. Brutal.
I don't even know if I'm drawing. I don't even know if there's any outs. I really don't think there are. Like, I could play single cards, but like, yeah, there's not a single card I can draw that would actually help me.
Yeah. Need that phase shift.
Not even that would do it for me.
Hmm. Make sure to
This is
keep that
just
Guntus
this
outside.
slow and painful death here.
Can't die. Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
still in it, right?
Still in
Right?
it. For hysteria? For. Okay. For a thing. I mean. Mm-hmm.
That's gonna keep me alive for like technically alive for a very long time.
Yeah. All right. All right. Let's go. Mars. Dominator. Okay. Nice. All right. Reap for three. Still good.
Look at that.
Hey, look at that.
Look at that. Got the exhume?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And the real question is whether I also play the three fates. I think so. Okay.
I knew
Uh,
that was going to happen.
yeah,
Something about playing on Tuesday nights with you.
it's all about the shuffles, the TCO hacks, the TCO hacks.
Yeah.
Um, hmm. Yeah. Well, what a difference Aguntis makes, for sure. But that's what it's hoping to do. You've got a whole bunch of taunters and the double exhume, and just try to outlast their ways of fighting through your taunt line to keep playing the Western Guntus.
Trying to
Uh,
think what my Guntus deck is called. It's a very similar idea to yours there.
hmm. Yeah, I actually had decent success with this deck back in the day. Was was pretty good, and still can put up a good game. Obviously, it is dependent on drawing that Western Guntus, but damage pips took a lot of the sting away from uh,
That's true.
one power witches.
Yeah. So Burglar Eye Flag that I just linked there, it's got the two exhumes, the Guntus, it's got a Gub, it's got three Protect the Weaks, it's
Mm-hmm.
got a Lion Botrum, a Hadroth's Wall, Child of Safeguard, um, Blinding Light, some pretty cool stuff.
Oh, that's cool, and you can keep your Guntress a little bit bigger on the flank too. That's pretty sweet.
Keep it bigger. You could give it armor if you wanted to, even though the Protect the Weak would also give it taunt.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Still might be an okay option in some cases.
Interesting.
But yeah.
Interesting. Well, we got to show off the Dexters a little, which is kind of cool.
All
The
part of the plan.
all part of the plan. The edge case where they get to be played in a combo turn. Yeah, I actually do like Golden Aura. I don't know if this qualifies as bad card, but I don't hate it. Don't hate it.
No, I think it's a perfectly good card.
Mm. Well,
I mean, it would be much better if it was in a set that had better use creatures. Like if that were in Mass Mutation, I think that'd be a pretty amazing card.
is it a Worlds Collide card as well? It'd be a great Worlds. No, there's no Sanctum. No Sanctum.
No?
Golden Aura, just AOA. Okay.
Yeah. And most creatures in AoA are just Reap gain one.
Mm-hmm.
So
1.1, 1.1 arc, a flat 1.1 on arc. Interesting. I don't know. Do you have a cutoff for like what you consider bad in terms of
no, I never
arc?
thought about it. I mean, the arc values are subjective and situational, so I don't really think. I mean, yeah, I guess I'd consider in general 1.1 I would consider bad, but
Yeah, I guess. I mean, maybe not like what you think, but is there sort of a point at which SAS is telling us that a card is bad, or trying to tell us that a card is bad? I mean, one is
um
almost certainly
one
bad. Yeah.
one's definitely bad. If you think about if every card in your deck had a 2,
Mm-hmm.
your deck would be a 72.
Yeah.
So I would say anything below a 2 is probably considered bad.
What is the 50%, 50th percentile? Is it 65?
Probably about that. That sounds might be a little higher now with Winds of Exchange.
Hmm. Interesting. Interesting. Oh, cool. Well, fun games. Yeah, Tuesday.
Yeah, so,
Tuesday is
tons of
hacked.
fun. We all had a great time.
We did indeed. And thanks, folks, for in the chat for hanging out with us. Good times indeed. Good times indeed. And yeah, hope you all enjoyed. We will be back tomorrow night. In
Yeah,
fact,
we
um,
will. Special guest Astron, aka Pirate.
yeah, super excited for that. Should be a good one. Solid content tonight. All right, we'll take it. We'll take it. Appreciate it. Although,
Thanks, Cloggin.
yeah, we've already established that eye rolls can't be seen through the chat, but we'll take it at face value. There you
I
go.
feel like that's a very telling comma after content. Solid content tonight. Usually Less than solid. Usually it's some liquid content. Tonight was solid though.
Only took 60 episodes, but we got there. We got to solid.
We've reached a new state of matter.
I think that means we need to stop. Stop. We're no longer too sloppy. All right, we're joking, getting silly. Is late over here. We're gonna call it a night.
Yeah.
So
Good thing we started early.
good time indeed.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you
Later,
tomorrow.
peeps. Yeah. Until then, bye.